The hearing chamber hums with electricity, a restless quiet broken only by the pop of camera shutters and the low murmur of journalists whispering updates into microphones. Every seat is filled, every eye fixed on the two men at the long mahogany table. One reclines with the swagger of a man who has never been told no. The other sits straight-backed, hands folded, gaze steady, patient, unreadable. Trump shifts in his chair, the smirk already forming. "You've been talking for years, Barack, but talk's cheap. You can't prove any of that." His voice carries that familiar blend of bravado and mockery that once filled stadiums. The room tightens around him. Even the cameras seem to pause mid-click. Across the table, Obama doesn't flinch. He studies Trump for a moment, the way a teacher looks at a student who hasn't done the reading. Then softly, almost kindly, he says, "You sure about that?" A flicker passes across Trump's face, a flash of irritation masked by another smirk. But the room senses it, the subtle shift in power, the tremor in arrogance. The air thickens. The voice of the narrator cuts through the tension. Low and measured. Nobody expected what happened next. Not Congress, not the media. Not even Trump himself. Cut to the press gallery. Fingers fly over phone screens. Tweets explode across the feed. Something big is happening. Obama's got receipts. In studios across the country, anchors lean forward, voices trembling. This might be the most shocking exchange in modern political history. Back in the chamber, Trump's impatience flares. He leans forward, tapping the table. "You've got nothing." "You never did." Obama breathes in slowly. He opens the folder before him, sliding one document into view. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. "Actually," he says, meeting Trump's eyes, "I can." Silence. The cameras zoom in. The heartbeat of the nation seems to sink to the sound of pages turning. A single flashbulb ignites the moment. White light catching Trump's stunned expression as the first line of truth hits the air, and then freeze. The screen darkens. The words cut through like thunder. Obama forces Trump to admit the truth, but no one in that room, not even the man behind the smirk, could imagine what would come out of his mouth next. The clip replays. Across every network before the hearing is even over, the nation's pulse spikes. Cable anchors cut to split screens, tweets multiply by the second, and the hashtag "the hearing of the century" surges into global trend territory. But the voiceover steadies the chaos. To understand why this moment mattered so much, you have to know what led here. We rewind. The week before the hearing, after a media circus, Trump had framed it as his final vindication, a public stage to bury old narratives. Supporters called it a victory lap. Commentators called it arrogance in motion. One pundit sneered, "He's turning accountability into entertainment." Meanwhile, Obama kept his silence. No interviews, no press statements, just preparation behind closed doors. The mystery of his calm drove the networks wild. "Why isn't he fighting back?" one anchor demanded. "Does he even have anything to show?" Outside the Capitol, crowds swelled. Flags, chants, homemade signs that read "Truth over power" and "Dignity fights back." The air smelled of rain and tension. In coffee shops and barber shops, people whispered, "He's walking into the lion's den." Narration tightens like a drum. This wasn't just another political hearing. It was the collision of two Americas, one loud, one steady. One built on dominance, the other on discipline. In private circles, aides warned Obama that the entire setup was a trap. Televised, choreographed, designed for humiliation. But he answered the same way every time. Let them film. The truth doesn't fear the camera. That single sentence leaked to the press and ignited the public's imagination. Commentators started calling it the truth test. The stakes, once political, became personal, moral. Every network promised the confrontation of the decade. Every citizen with a phone became an armchair juror. By dawn on the day of the hearing, camera crews lined the Capitol steps. The sun rose over a divided crowd chanting two different names. Inside, aides whispered last-minute strategies. Trump rehearsed talking points. Obama simply opened his folder. The voiceover cuts back in, slow and deliberate. America had waited years for this face-off. But when the cameras started rolling, it stopped being a hearing. A pause, the sound of a heartbeat, and became a reckoning. Before the hearing became legend, there was the myth, the larger-than-life figure who built an empire on spectacle. Trump's rise was powered by volume. The louder the claim, the faster it spread. Every rally was theater, every insult a headline. For years, he turned politics into performance and chaos into currency. He had mocked, dismissed, and diminished anyone who challenged him. Reporters, judges, even presidents. But Obama was different. The former president wasn't just a political rival. He was a mirror Trump refused to look into, calm where Trump was combustible, deliberate where Trump was impulsive, and perhaps worst of all for him, beloved for the very traits he ridiculed. Clips flash in sequence. Trump at a rally shouting, "We're winning so much, you'll get tired of it." A press conference where he waves papers, claiming total innocence. A late-night tweet storm filled with rage and exclamation marks. The narration cuts through the noise. For years, he'd controlled the narrative by sheer force of confidence. But confidence without truth is a house built on fog. Those around him began to see the cracks. Advisors whispered warnings that never landed. One aide later said, "You couldn't brief him. He didn't want facts. He wanted affirmation." And affirmation was something the crowds always gave, until they didn't. Then came the investigations, the reports, the slow drip of documents that wouldn't vanish under bluster. Each headline chipped at the armor, each fact peeled away a layer of myth. But Trump stayed defiant. On the eve of the hearing, he told his team, "They can't touch me." They never could. He walked into that chamber certain it would be another show, another chance to dominate the screen. He rehearsed smirks, one-liners, the timing of applause lines that would never come. What he didn't rehearse was silence, because silence, when it finally arrived, would undo him. The narration lowers to a whisper. For years, he defined power as control. But power without humility always meets its reckoning, and in that hearing room, beneath the lights and the lenses, the first crack in that confidence was about to appear. Not with a bang, but with a single, unshakable fact. Long before the cameras and the confrontation, Obama had learned the language of restraint. Born between worlds, the son of Kenya and Kansas, he understood early that silence could be louder than shouting. Every pause, every word, every look carried weight. And in the hearing that awaited him, that calm would be his sharpest weapon. The night before, he sat alone in his study, the city's noise faint through the window. Stacks of documents covered the table, neatly tabbed, underlined, annotated in his familiar handwriting. He wasn't just preparing arguments. He was preparing for a moment that would echo beyond politics, a test of whether truth could still cut through noise. Old memories surfaced. The bruising debates, the late nights in the Oval Office, the faces of citizens who'd looked to him not just for leadership but for reassurance that dignity still mattered. He remembered the fury of birther conspiracies, the mockery, the coded insults, and how he'd answered not with anger but with poise. Every trial had trained him for this one. Friends had told him to stay out of it. "You've done your time, Barack. You don't need this circus." But he'd smiled, the way he did when he knew something they didn't. "It's not about needing it," he'd said quietly. "It's about finishing what truth started." In the days leading up to the hearing, reporters hounded him for sound bites. He gave none. That silence unnerved his critics and inspired his supporters. One headline read, "The man who refuses to play the game might be about to redefine it." Behind closed doors, his team rehearsed every possible line of attack. Obama listened, nodded, and said little. When an aide asked, "What if he mocks you again?" he replied, "Then I'll let him. He can have the moment. I'll have the message." He walked into that hearing not as a man seeking revenge, but as one carrying something heavier, the moral exhaustion of years spent watching truth twisted for entertainment. His calm wasn't weakness. It was strategy. Every heartbeat, every still moment was calculated to remind America that leadership didn't have to roar to be heard. The narration slows, voice thick with emotion. He wasn't there to win applause. He was there to hold a mirror to power, to show that dignity, once dismissed as weakness, could be the sharpest form of strength. Flashbacks weave through the scene. The inauguration crowd in 2009, the hard choices of the presidency, the quiet moments with Michelle when the cameras stopped rolling. Each memory builds the portrait of a man who had seen every kind of storm and learned to stand still through all of them. Now, seated across from Trump, he feels the same composure settle over him. The noise fades, replaced by the rhythm of his own breath. He thinks of every immigrant who'd ever been told they didn't belong, every young person who'd ever felt unseen, every moment where decency seemed to lose to arrogance. And he knows why he's here. Not for spectacle, not for scorekeeping, for clarity. The air inside the hearing room is tight, almost metallic. Every cough, every shuffle of paper echoes like a drumbeat. Trump leans forward, elbows on the table, fingers steepled. His grin is rehearsed, but his eyes dart too often. Searching for cameras, for control, he starts with swagger. You've had your say, Barack. You've had your time. 8 years and nothing to show for it but talk. His voice rises with each word, feeding on its own echo. Laughter ripples from a few seats behind him. The loyal entourage that always laughs first, loudest. Obama doesn't move. The silence he holds is unnerving. When he finally speaks, his tone is steady, almost conversational. That's one way to see it. Another way is to let the record speak for itself. Trump waves a hand dismissively. The record? The record's fake. Everyone knows it. People are tired of your lectures. He turns to the committee, half grinning. Let's be honest. The man's addicted to speeches. Some in the audience chuckle. Others look down, uneasy. The narrator's voice cuts softly through the noise. It was arrogance against endurance, ego against evidence, two styles of power colliding under the same lights. Obama's eyes narrow slightly, not in anger, but in focus. You can keep saying that, he says, calm as a whisper, but repetition doesn't make a lie true. The words hang in the air. Trump opens his mouth, but no sound comes. Cameras flash. The silence expands, heavy, magnetic. Reporters glance at each other, sensing something shift. The dynamic that had always favored noise now leans toward the quiet. Obama isn't performing. He's dismantling. One sentence at a time, Trump fumbles for footing. You think you're some kind of saint? Please. We both know what this is. Politics, plain and simple. Obama studies him, almost sympathetic. No, he replies softly. This is what happens when politics forgets its purpose. A beat, a murmur from the gallery. Even those who came expecting fireworks can feel it, the tension before collapse. And then Trump, visibly irritated, jabs the table, voice cutting through the silence. You can't even prove what you're saying. Obama's expression doesn't change, just a faint, knowing smile, because he's been waiting for that exact line. Obama exhales slowly, the faintest trace of a smile curling at the edge of his mouth. The room still hums with Trump's last outburst, raw, impatient, desperate to regain control. Then Obama reaches for the folder in front of him, the same one he's kept closed all morning, its edges marked with quiet purpose. He opens it not for drama but for truth. The pages shift like whispers of inevitability. You said, he begins evenly, that you never authorized the payments outlined in this report. He slides a document across the table, its signature visible even from a distance. That's your name, isn't it? Trump leans forward, squints, scoffs. That's fake. Obama tilts his head, eyes steady. You also said you weren't briefed on the matter. Another paper joins the first. This memo shows you were twice. The murmurs start small, a cough here, a rustle there, then grow into a wave. A senator's pen freezes mid-note. The gallery leans closer. The camera light glints off Trump's expression, suddenly less certain. Obama's tone never rises. You've spent years claiming the facts were against you. But facts aren't enemies. They're reminders. Trump straightens in his chair, forcing a grin. You think this proves anything? You were supposed to be smart. Maybe you forgot. People don't care about paperwork anymore. A pause. Obama meets his eyes. Then maybe that's the problem. It lands like a punch wrapped in calm. The room exhales as if it's been holding its breath for an hour. The narrator's voice enters like a slow drumbeat. Every era has a moment when arrogance meets evidence, when noise finally meets the weight of proof. Obama continues, each sentence cutting cleaner than the last. You built your image on the idea that truth was negotiable, that if you said it loud enough, it became real. But truth doesn't need volume. It just needs daylight. Cameras zoom in. Every network runs the feed raw. No edits, no commentary. The clip begins to spread before the exchange is even over. Trump mutters something about witch hunts and bias, but the words crumble under the sound of Obama's composure. Then, without glancing at his notes, Obama delivers the line that detonates across the country. Leadership isn't about hiding from the truth. It's about facing it, even when it burns. The sentence hangs in the air, echoing through marble walls, seeping into the stunned silence that follows. No shouting. No applause. Just a collective realization that something irreversible has happened. Obama closes the folder gently, as if sealing the moment. His voice lowers, intimate, unshakable. Facts are stubborn things, Mr. Trump. You can deny them, spin them, even bury them, but they wait. They always wait. Trump looks around, searching for an ally, a friendly nod, a camera to wink at. None come. The smirk is gone now, replaced by something smaller, harder to name. Not fear, not guilt, but the dawning recognition that this time there's no script left to hide behind. The narrator's voice drops to a whisper, and for the first time in a long time, the man who never backed down had nothing left to say. The room stays still. The silence feels alive. Then, slowly, a reporter's phone vibrates. One headline already flashing across the screen. Truth on record, Obama drops receipts. And as that moment begins its viral climb, one thought spreads faster than the clip itself. If this was the reckoning, what would come after? Within minutes, the footage explodes across every platform. News alerts light up phones, feeds refresh in real time, and the nation watches, stunned, electrified, divided. The clip of Obama's calm, dismantling replays endlessly. His stillness, his precision, the sentence that silenced a man who'd made a career out of never being silenced. Anchors rush to describe what they've just witnessed. It wasn't anger. It wasn't shouting. It was control. Another shakes her head, speechless. We've never seen him that quiet before. On social media, the world reacts. Truth on record becomes the fastest trending tag of the year. Memes flood in, Obama closing the folder with captions like, "Case closed." Reaction clips pour from every corner of the internet. College students cheering, veterans nodding solemnly, immigrants watching with tears in their eyes. One tweet captures the mood perfectly. That wasn't politics. That was history reclaiming its dignity. Even conservative pundits stumble over their talking points. One mutters, "It's hard to spin silence." Another sighs. He walked right into it. Late-night hosts can't resist. Imagine getting fact-checked live by the guy you spent years mocking. Laughter, applause, but beneath it all, awe. The narrator returns, soft but resolute. For millions watching, it wasn't about a folder or a signature. It was about something deeper, the quiet victory of truth over noise. In the hearing room, the moment lingers like an aftershock. Trump stares ahead, jaw set, unwilling to meet anyone's gaze. Senators shuffle papers just to break the tension. Obama gathers his documents with the same calm he entered with. He doesn't gloat. He doesn't need to. The evidence has already spoken louder than any argument.